Hello, everyone, and welcome. I hope you all had a lovely lunch, had some coffee. Our conversation is bridging synergies across borders, which is more important. I'm your moderator, Fiona Michelle. I'm the Director of International Outreach at SynBioBeta, and I'd like to welcome our wonderful panelists to the stage. Welcome. Do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi, great to be here and to get to talk with you all. I'm India Hook-Barnard, the CEO of EBRC, the Engineering Biology Research Consortium.
Hi, I'm Richard Kitney. I'm Professor at Imperial College London and also Co-Director of the UK's National Industrial Translation Centre for Synthetic Biology.
Good afternoon, iGEMers. I'm Rick Johnson. I am a member of the iGEM Foundation Board of Directors. I'm a distinguished visiting fellow at the Hoover Institutions at Stanford University. And then I'm also a director of BioMADE, the U.S. National Innovation Institute for Biomanufacturing, for the BioBricks Foundation, and with India and Dick on the council for the EBRC.
Hi, everyone. I'm Seung-gu Lee, Director of Korean National Biofoundry, which launched this year as a part of National Synthetic Biology Initiative. It's actually my first time attending iGEM, and I'm truly delighted to be here today and to meet all of you. Thank you.
Perfect. So as you can see, we have a panel from all over the world representing so many different disciplines, so much experience. But I want to get us all on the same page, which is when we talk about the global bioeconomy, it's this thing that we wave around, we're like, oh, the global bioeconomy. What do we actually mean? And Seung-gi, I want to come to you first because Korea is doing a lot of very big things. Can you give us a little bit of a preview of what's happening in Korea right now?
Korea established the first Synthetic Biology Promotion Act last April, and will put the act into effect next April. And the government is now preparing the detailed regulation to support this implementation. During this process, the need for global collaborative research has been emphasized, especially on issues of data and intellectual property ownership, research guidelines, responsibility, and sustainability. In the National Biofoundry project, which I'm leading, we also plan to allocate part of our budget to support these kind of studies.
Perfect. You've touched on a lot of things that I want to pull apart in this conversation, but I want also to bring in our other panelists. When you think of the global bioeconomy, obviously you've mentioned financing, you've mentioned regulation. What are some other things that we think about from that, please? Yeah.
So for me, I think the bioeconomy is just everything. What is the problem you have to solve? I think bio can help with that. Yeah. And I think you can see that here in this room. All the things that you're working on are really building toward the bioeconomy and what difference you can make in the world. And so for my organization, EBRC, we organize ourselves around issues of technical research, road mapping and innovation and what's possible, the different policy aspects, education and workforce, and security. And so within that, it really touches on all the application spaces: health and medicine, food and ag, energy, climate, environment, bioindustrial manufacturing, space, and you name it, can be contributing and really making a difference in the bioeconomy.
Yeah, every single village we have here and every cluster within every village is part of the bioeconomy. So I feel like we are actually standing in the room where it all starts.
The future.
Right, though? But it's so exciting. Dick, I want to come to you. What from your perspective and Imperial, what does the global bioeconomy mean to you?
I think we primarily see the bioeconomy as replacing a wide range of products which are currently based on fossil fuels through sustainable biomanufacturing, essentially based on biomass.
Yeah.
And to encapsulate that, I think I'd say that also includes sustainability as part of that. But it's the whole drive, primarily actually through synthetic biology, to be able to replace a wide range of products that are currently based on fossil fuels with synthetic biology-based products using biomass.
Yeah. Rick, how about you?
I think I take a very broad view of the bioeconomy in terms of economic activity derived from the life sciences, especially biotech and biomanufacturing across all products, processes, services, and data. But I also will start to be a little provocative here and slightly contrarian. I think increasingly we need to be careful about how we frame the bioeconomy, because I think there's a real risk that what we're doing is saying that this is a niche part of the economy, that this is sort of a siloed thing that is not mainstream of the economy. And clearly what I think we are seeing is increasingly bio is an integral part of the economy. And so I think we need to, on the one hand, I understand and I agree why it's useful to have numbers and talk about the bioeconomy, but I worry that this sort of diverts attention from bio as a broad-based disruptive technology across all sectors. I might also say that I think there's a risk that that has policy implications that may also be involved here. So one of which is I think we may undercount the broad effect of bio because we're looking at different aspects, and traditionally, if we just if we default to sort of looking at food and ag, health, industrial bio, etc., we may underappreciate that part. Second thing I worry about is that it leads to a focus on sort of immediate applications when in fact we also, and particularly now, need a lot more on foundational research and tools. And then two last points I'll just make, introductory points of sort of why I think we need a more nuanced approach, is that we tend to have within the bioeconomy this sort of either or. We want to get rid of fossil fuels. We want to transition to a greener, more sustainable thing. Great. But the point being that from a realistic point of view, we're going to need fossil fuels, like it or not, for a number of years to come. And so, for example, and AI is just going to increase that. There's an interesting paper from Niddle at MIT just last week that by 2030, 8 to 12% of all electricity will be devoted to AI data centers.
Yeah. You've brought up so many things that I really want to dig into, and everyone on this panel has highlighted huge challenges, and I really take your point, Rick, that we're talking about the bioeconomy, but really we are talking about the economy of the future, and a lot of it will be made with bio if we want to still have an economy. And I hate that point that we will be stuck with fossil fuels for a little while longer, and I feel like it's our work in this room to help accelerate that change. So how do you pick the problem you want to take on? Because I want to take on data storage, I want to take on fossil fuel reduction, I want to take on novel products, foods, but I am one person, we are all each one person. So how, India, I see you nodding, how would you take this on? Pick on you first.
I'm kind of laughing because I have two answers that seem a little contradictory.
Okay.
So maybe the first one is that there's so much potential and so much you could do. It can really be overwhelming with the opportunities there and things that you're interested in. So I would say, pick one and focus on it and really, dig into that and give it, time to really learn things and give that focus. At the same time, you're not stuck in any one thing. And so that's one reason you can really give it some focus, is because if you decide that's not for you or it's not the moment, like in terms of your career, you can also shift gears and decide that you want to take what you learned doing iGEM if you have a startup. what you learn in that experience or in that application area, then you can decide that you want to go and do something else with that knowledge. And so I would just say, when there's all of this you can work on and all of this potential ahead of you, just know that careers make sense in retrospect. So if I look back at my own career, that makes sense. At the time, this was not a plan going forward, right? So do what you really care about. Ask yourself, what are you learning? And then what do you want to do next?
No, I think it's an incredibly important point that the world is not closed off once you make a decision. I mean, just for my own sake, I don't even have a science degree. Here I am. So, right, anyway, so I think that's a really important point. Sung-gu, I want to come to you as well, because I know you have some points on how do you pick a problem to solve.
I would first focus on valorizing unused or wasted resources. Things like waste metals, food and plastic waste, agricultural byproducts, or methane in nature. Such effort can create both economic benefits and also social impact at the same time. On the other hand, another important challenge for me is to develop new functional and marketable materials. For example, crystalline cellulose with exceptional strength or self-assembling enzymes with unique physical and chemical properties. I believe both directions, valorizing waste and new-to-nature materials, are very important for building a sustainable bioeconomy.
No, I really like those points, and India is something we were actually talking about a little bit earlier with feedstocks of, the whole goal, I think, of this collaborative bioeconomy that we're trying to build is to be, non-extractive. I mean, the fossil fuel economy is inherently an extractive economy, and what you're talking about in terms of valorizing waste, taking things that were seen as non-valuable and turning them into something that creates a positive change is really, I think, what our community is all about, and I think that's a growing movement. But Rick, I see you nodding, jump in on this.
No, I completely agree with all of these points because I think the really interesting opportunity is it could be small and very specific, or it can be massively large. I think the unifying things, and particularly if I was at an early stage of my career, which I'm a long way from, is that I would be interested in what's going to have impact with whatever I'm doing. India mentioned having a passion, because you need something that's going to sustain you over the lows and during the other thing. I'm also very interested in sort of realistic outcomes rather than sort of just outputs. So I think that, there's obviously no one way, and I think the other great thing about what we have in iGEM that carries over to what we pick about is realizing how we need breadth with depth. That we need both deep understanding in particular areas of whether it be in biology and in computing and engineering, but we need a sort of a literacy or a fluency that cuts across so that we can work on teams as we do in iGEM to solve problems, whether they be big or small.
Yeah, Dick, yeah.
I think for me, one of the key things is enthusiasm. I mean, there's a wide range of problems you can work on. If we talk about iGEMers, when you leave iGEM, it's a wide range of problems you can work on. There are lots of ways to address these problems. But the key thing for me is, have you got some expertise and have you got some experience? And if you have got expertise and experience, that's not the only way, but it's a useful way to get into these problems. It's probably worth saying at this point that iGEM is a tremendous source for new products. When I just think about our experience at Imperial, we actually started, believe it or not, we started our first iGEM team, which I led with my colleague Paul Fremont in 2006.
Wow.
And in the subsequent years, a whole series of students of our teams actually turned our iGEM projects into products.
Yeah.
And at least 2 of those people now run $100 million companies based upon what was originally an iGEM project. I think that's really worth saying.
You know, I think that's a great point, Dick, because one of my favorite things about iGEM is to look at what has happened with the projects and what has happened with iGEMers. You know, well, Dick maybe can mention a number of the things that have come out of the UK and Imperial, particularly with some companies. But I think what's really interesting is it's across geographies and across organizations. So, for example, in China, the BlueFo came about because you had the Peking team and the Xinhua team realizing there was a mutual interest, despite being down the street from each other and being natural rivals, to create a really vibrant team. In the U.S., in 2011, the grand prize winning team was the University of Washington. They then created a company called PVC Biologics. They were working on enzymes for celiac disease. And 6 or 7 years later, after very positive clinical trial data, they sold the company for $330 million to a large pharma. But I think the other point is it's not just the universities. So, for example, Opentron, who's a wonderful sponsor here at iGEM and is giving back regularly, Opentrons came out of GenSpace, the first community-based lab, so that the companies and these ideas are not just university ones. They're coming from multiple directions, and they're not limited by sort of Europe or North America or Japan. One of my favorites is C6 Energy. C6 Energy, I think it was 2014, I may have the year wrong, what came out of the Indian IIT Madras team working on algae for biofuels. They've now pivoted a little bit and are a global leader in algae growth and uses for multiple purposes. They're now based in Bangalore, and they're doing really well. And then finally, and this is one that Janet just told me about this morning. This year we have 143 high school teams. I think that's the right number.
Wow, that's a lot.
We have a high school team that has spawned a company. Piezo Therapeutics Lambert High School in Georgia has year after year been a competitor in iGEM, and Piezo Therapeutics came out of the high school.
That's fantastic.
Project. So the idea that this comes from any particular place, no. This is broadly based. I wish we had more precise numbers. I mean, the numbers that we use, which may or may not be correct, are that there are at least 250 companies that have directly come from iGEM projects. But my guess is that there's at least double that number it may not have been their iGEM project, but it was their iGEM experience that got them interested in entrepreneurial activity.
Yeah. Dick, I want to bring you into this as well. I know you have some direct experience.
Yeah, so I was, just by accident really, yesterday I was looking at the market cap of some of these companies, and if I single out 2, I mentioned already at 100 million, which is about right. So there are 2 companies that I'd single out from the UK. There are many more around the world, of course, and these are Colorifics and LabGenius. If you look at Colorifics, which is really becoming a very successful company that works on synthetic biology-based dyes, so they're very environmentally friendly. They actually won, and I won't get the dates exactly right, but they won iGEM in about 2012.
That's right.
And they came out of Cambridge University, won iGEM, and then went back to the university and decided to spin out a company which is now called Colorifics. You should look them up. And they're now worth about 100 million and growing really fast. And the other company, LabGenius, which works on various types of proteins and optimizing protein developments and also antigens, that came out of an iGEM project, which was an Imperial College iGEM project. It was actually run, the leader of the group, I mean, I led the team with my colleague Paul Freeman, but the key person was somebody called James Field. I think they came 3rd that year in the competition. That was about 2014, something like that. And James then went back to Imperial, did a PhD with me, and set up Lab Genius, and he's now the CEO of Lab Genius. And that's a really interesting example because there are many, many good scientists around that work in these companies, but James, to me, represents an almost unique group of people that can make the major transition from being an excellent scientist to being a really good CEO.
And obviously, this is not a recent development. The 2006 MIT team is now called Ginkgo Bioworks.
Right.
Yeah.
I think there's I think the takeaway here, because then I just realized I'd sent us on a little bit of a rabbit hole because we could do this all day, and that's what's so amazing. I mean, there are so many teams that have created so many companies, have raised lots of money, but more importantly, I think have put products into the market and are making this transition possible. And so I wanted to think a little bit, take a big step back of, what are some of the, and India, I want to come to you for this. What are some of the trends that you think have been successful for companies that have spun out in the bioeconomy or just in the economy? Let's just put it this way, bio companies. What are some of the, pro tips that you think you're seeing in the market?
We'll make some success.
Yeah, no, go for it. This is open to anyone. India was going to pick on you, but
I think one of the key points is that they need to focus on producing a product.
yeah.
It sounds easy, but it's incredibly difficult. I know that because I've done 3 successful companies myself. You have to define your products, and that typically is a bit of what I loosely call hardware. It's got to be something physical as opposed to AI or software. You can make money out of software or AI, but these companies typically produce very good products, and they spend a lot of time thinking about that. So that's one thing you've got to do, and then the second thing is you have to really look carefully at the business case. You have to work out exactly where funding is going to come from. We can talk about this a bit later, but there's issues which I'm involved in on a day-to-day basis, running Simbi City, which is a big accelerator in the UK, and there you have to really convince people that they need to spend time looking at how they're going to extend their revenue stream and how they're going to get the funding for that over a 2 to 3 year period.
Yeah. India, yeah.
Yeah, maybe I'll comment on one of the things I think is an important point of success for those companies is, and what you get here at iGEM is teamwork, and for the people really passionate about what they're doing, and that is true of those successful companies. And I will also say that for those who are maybe less successful, that can still be a real success in terms of the the world, in terms of who you're meeting and the relationships and the friends you make along the way, that how you take that and build that to the next company and take that to the next problem that you're trying to solve. And so even if a given company is not successful in the way that we've named some of these, that doesn't mean that there wasn't a lot of success there. And so I think that's really important in terms of those things that are common across those successful companies and others. In terms of maybe future trends, I mean, basically you can't be on a panel or probably on a team without talking about AI and automation. So I will say it. And how that really enables so many things. But to Dick's point, I think it's, biology is when it gets real. I mean, you can develop those things and your models and algorithms and your automation. But when you're actually bringing it into the real world and with the kind of products and solutions that you're all working on, when you take the AI and make it in the physical space where we obey the laws of physics and actually make something that probably makes a sound when you drop it, then that's when you're really going to change the world. And so I think that's, while the trends and things around AI and automation are super exciting in terms of how it can accelerate, it's really that how you bring that together to really solve the problem in biology.
Yeah. So, Ngu, I want to bring you in as well, talk a little bit about AI, because you've put some important points here, India. So, yeah, please.
Yeah. I have always been interested in developing smart molecular sensors that can be applied more universally. They could be based on transcription factors, RNA devices, or CRISPR-Cas genetic circuits. Such a system could achieve a different level of throughput and resultantly big data for far beyond what conventional analytical instrument like LCMS can provide, greatly enhancing the chance to develop AI-inspired new processes. The problem, of course, is that these sensors are not general-purpose tools. However, considering the rapid advances in protein and nucleic acid design capabilities, I believe this idea is no longer unrealistic. And I hope that synthetic biology and biofoundry technologies can be an enabler in making it possible.
Yeah. No, I really take your point, and I'm actually glad you brought that up as well in terms of the tool set that we're talking about. I mean, again, we're talking about collaboration. One of the best things that we can collaborate on are tools. How to build, as you say, physical products. It's not good. I mean, AI is useful, but it can't just be AI. Rick, I want to come to you, and I'm so sorry to bother you, but can you kindly hold the mic? Yes, thank you. But yeah, give us your view a little bit on the tools like that we're all trying to build together. Yeah.
Well, I think one of the commonalities over the 20, 25 years that synthetic biology has evolved is really it continues to be a tools revolution. And it's the tools that enable us to make many of the advances that we have, whether it be in synthesis or in high throughput or all sorts of things. And so I'm really excited as we use AI to develop new sets of tools. I'll just use one example because he's close to me at Stanford. Some of you have read a paper in the last month or so by Brian High, which is really ChatGPT for genomes. And what Brian has done has used the predictive power of large language models to develop an AI model that writes genetic code. And so the implications for how that tool could be used for accelerating the bioengineering design process, how it can be used for reprogramming microbes for lots of new things. And so this constant evolution of tools, I think, is one of the storylines of our community, because that's essentially what's going to get that is also why I come back to the point I was making much at the outset, is that we've got to continue to invest in foundational tools and research, because they're the things that enable us to do the applications.
Yeah. Dick, I see you nodding and bring you in.
Yeah, I mean, just to add to that, I think it's always important to bear in mind that synthetic biology is what we would call platform technology, so it's commonality of technology that can be applied across a wide range of fields. And as Rick says, what underpins all of that is the whole plethora of tools, whether it be AI or a whole range of more traditional tools. You need all of that to work in the platform to be able to then apply it to applications.
Yeah. I feel like this is bringing us a bit full circle of, we've talked about, we have so many global challenges, you can't take them all on at the same time, and yet the solution to these challenges requires all of these different approaches from different tools to actually building physical products, to having national and international infrastructure. So I think we've now put this framework together, if you will, in this conversation, we've put together a framework of what do you need to build a bioeconomy, which is really just the economy, which is really just a giant collaborative effort. And so taking that all in mind, how do we do this on a global scale? I mean, there's so many things that we need to do as a society to collaborate internationally. So maybe I just kind of ask everyone to popcorn. I'll start with you, India, because you're sitting next to me, so I get to pick on you. So sorry. What are some of the pieces that you think we're missing, or that you want to see as a global collaborative society? What should we be doing together?
Yeah, so I think the example of iGEM and just getting together and working together, and I both collaborative and competitive spirit in a really positive way. I mean, this is a competition, but it's a celebration.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of approach and attitude that like we're all bringing different strengths and talents together, and how do we work together in that way? I think that's what we need to do at the larger scale. But I think one of the things that I also come down to sometimes is, there's infrastructure that we need to help us collaborate. If we think about standards and metrics and how do we share information, sometimes you say infrastructure or standards and metrics and it doesn't sound very exciting. But when you really look at, like if you as you're traveling internationally and you're thinking about how do you plug in your laptop or plug it into the wall and does it work or do you need an adapter? That's about standards and how we are able to share information or connect things together. And so being able to do that, like through the biofoundries, we're working on some projects together around global centers related to the biofoundries. And how do the biofoundries work locally at their own biofoundry, but then how do they share information, or even like maybe you have an idea in Paris, but then you're going to share that information with our friends in South Korea, and they're actually going to develop or work on that product. So I think it's thinking about those things that you're doing in the local space, but then being able to share information and globally.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really important point. And I think this notion that we can all just build companies and products and then we're all just going to set them free into the market and it'll totally work. It's not quite that simple. We actually need these frameworks and they can be exhausting to put together. We have to get everyone to agree.
And regulations.
Oh, I was just going to say the big R word.
But in a good way.
Yeah.
International standards, technical standards are absolutely essential in any industrial field. Just to give one example, you take a 380 Airbus. A 380 Airbus has something like 700 different types of nuts and bolts. Unless those nuts and bolts were produced according to an international standard, we wouldn't be flying around in jets. That's just one example. We need those standards in synthetic biology as well, and
Absolutely.
they're coming.
Well, and I think part of that also comes with our big favorite, regulation, which, before anyone freaks out and goes, oh God, regulations, we actually need them, so we have a roadmap. Rick, do you want to jump in on this?
Sure, and I want to add a couple things to the points that were just made. I mean, clearly around, I think there's a whole range of activities that need to be undertaken, and I think it's not about regulation alone, it's governance.
Yes.
On a broader plane. But I was going to make two other points. Is, collaborations are absolutely essential, but then I think we have to understand that the world in which we're doing these collaborations is not the same as when we did collaborations 10 or 20 years ago. We have the geopolitical shifts, for better or worse. I think it's good that synthetic biology, engineering biology is now a domain of strategic competition, but also we have a multiplicity of players around the world who have the capacity to impact and to influence. We have obviously all the rapid advances in science and technology that undergirds everything we're doing. And then the complexity of the global challenges that we're addressing just get more complex. So I think, Dick and India both mentioned, obviously, metrology and standards is one. I'll give a big shameless plug to my colleagues on the Stanford Hoover Biostrategies Leadership Initiative. You can find the booth behind. There's a paper that has just come out around, called Biosecurity Really. I want to call your attention to it. Hope you'll stop by the booth. They'll tell you more about it. But basically, the idea of how collaborations new ways of thinking about collaborations can help to build biosecurity is something that we often lose sight of in these new things. And then I'll just make two other points beyond that. One is I think there's a huge opportunity for new consortia for cross-sectoral platforms, both geographically and across sectors. And then one we haven't talked about, which is money.
Yeah.
We need to de-risk. We need public-private partnerships. We need a bigger toolkit of collaborative mechanisms, because basically what we need is not being met with current levels. And so how can we do that?
Yeah, go ahead, Dick. Do you want to talk about money?
Yeah, I could talk about
Yeah, we got to talk about money. All right.
Well, I mean, if you start a company, you need to be aware of, well, first of all, the key thing to say is that any iGEMer who starts a company, what you need to go out and if you're an average iGEMer, you need to go out there and get some really good business advice
Yeah.
on a regular basis. That's incredibly important, because we're all experts at science, but we're not experts at running companies, we're not experts at finance. And there are various stages you can go through. You do go typically through, as a company, won't go through all of them, but you start off with grants, then you go to family and friends or angel supporters, and then you get into the VC world to get money that way. But there are very well-defined strategies for doing this, which any iGEMer, if they're going to start a company, needs to tap into that expertise.
Yeah. Seong-gu, do you want to come in on this at all? Do you want to talk about money? Not yet? Okay. India.
Maybe I'll just, you were talking about the individual companies and how you're thinking about that and the investment. So I also want to put a plug in for the importance of you as researchers and in this community, also talking with policymakers about, and research organizations and nationally, about investing in what's possible in the future, because it isn't just about, it's very important if you're thinking about your own individual company, but also what does the entire landscape look like, the level of investment and some things that are pre-competitive that you need that'll help accelerate the industry as a whole. And so being able to share both the vision of what's possible and also where those sticking points are, and to really help our governments and others to really understand the investment in that infrastructure, and some of those other things are so critical.
I think there's also a lot of interesting questions out there. For example, is AI crowding out investment in synthetic biology and engineering biology? As Fiona can talk to from her role at SynBioBeta, which every year has a terrific investment report that comes out every year. And the numbers I think I saw in the 2025 report were $12 billion investment. Well, the number for AI just in the first 8 months of this year is $190 billion. And so how the capital flows are going and where they are raises a number of interesting problems that we're going to have to deal with.
Yeah. Do you guys want to check?
Yeah, I'll just maybe add to that I think we have to think about both the short, like immediate, and then the much longer term.
Yeah.
And that is part of the issue about, with an individual company, you have to think about right now and survival and what are you doing next, and return on investment. And for VCs, I think maybe, and some of the models, people are expecting in the way you do with AI, maybe you invest in something and the turnaround and your return on that is really fast and really big. Whereas in biology, again, we have to obey the laws of physics here. There are some things that just take time. And so making sure that we as a society also have the right models and investment so that we are, some of it is planting a tree, and it's going to take a little while to be able for that to bear fruit. Now, if you're talking about biology, we might be able to make that tree grow faster and bear all kinds of different kinds of fruits. So you might want to think about that. But we still are not going to have maybe the same model of you make a lot of money really quickly with AI is not necessarily even the appropriate measure of success for biology. And I think we need to have some kind of adjustment in our thinking on that.
I have to jump in here because we only have about 1 minute left, and I have one final question. And also, just very quickly on the AI thing, there might be a bust coming after this boom, so just everyone, don't get too excited about AI yet. Okay, last thing, it is exciting, but it's not the only thing in the world. Last question for everyone in this minute we have, because we're taking a look at the short term, we're taking a look at the long term. In the medium term, in the next 5 years, what is the one thing in one sentence, maybe 2 sentences, that you think could have the biggest impact on this collaborative, bio-based future economy that we're all building together? Yeah, go for it. Rick, yeah?
For me,
Okay, yeah, I'll go ahead.
Sorry, I made a mess. Rick, Dick?
Okay. Well, I can't do one, so I'll do three. Number one is I think moving towards predictive biology, where we move, as Drew Endy likes to say, from design, build, test, learn to design, build, work, is one. Second is the whole idea of the maturation of our community as the next transformative general platform technology.
Yep.
And then the last point I continue to be really excited by synthetic cell. I think that the development in the next couple of years of synthetic cell is going to be a game changer.
Dick?
I think on a more practical level, really, there needs to be a really well-defined funding model, financial model, which goes through all the stages of development. I mean, people talk about Series A, Series B, etc., but we need a well-defined model for synthetic biology, which is properly funded. Because at the end of the day, unfortunately, if you're growing a company and you're running a company, you need to address what we would call the bottom line. You need to look at the finance.
Yeah.
You need to look at the finance literally on a daily basis and how that is developing. And that's the kind of model that we really need in SynBio.
Seong-gu, do you want to add anything to this?
It's not an exciting topic, but I think reasonable regulation is essential for
Yeah?
safety. But sometimes overly strict GMO-style rules can hold us back. So for the sustainable future of the global bioeconomy, I hope we can establish balanced and more reasonable regulations that to ensure both the safety and encouraging innovations.
Perfect. India, last one to you.
Oh, so I'll say everything they said. So I get to say that, and I do think it is how we are working together, and so that means both developing those standards and metrics. The examples of the BioFoundry, really developing those and how it can really enable all of these application spaces, and it helps us kind of practice how it is that we are working together internationally. And so I think that so that we can really make it more predictable and programmable in terms of biology and really unlock all of that potential. So, yeah.
Amazing. Thank you all so much, and please join me in thanking our panelists. Thank you, guys.